Welcome to Still Growing in Grace. I'm Mike Zanker. Join me and other amazing guests as we explore and discover better, hope-filled perspectives on biblical texts and difficult themes. Prepare to expand your understanding of God's love and amazing grace. Growing in Grace Ministries Canada and Hope Fellowship, as well as Eastside Church, invite you to enjoy today's program as we dig deeper into what it means to be still growing in grace. Glad you're taking time to join me today, and I hope today's episode will be exciting because we're doing part 2 of this series called Hell, a Better Hope-Filled Perspective. And that's what my hope will be, that you're going to, one, get permission to question things you were never allowed to question, but then also find menu items for what hell could be that you were never told about. Or maybe another perspective that might add value to how this topic can still have a meaningful part of your vocabulary. But you'll also find out that maybe some of the parts that we've been using, they're no good. They need to get replaced. And so I hope you'll enjoy these conversations. Now, here's something awkward. I don't know how I did it, but this part 2 is really the part 1. Last week's part 1 was really part 2. I just don't know. I thought, and I was sure I didn't mess that up. But anyway, today is part 2 according to the series, but it's really part 1, and I really hope you get to enjoy it. This is now airing on the Grace Awakening Network live every Wednesday evening at 9:30. So tonight, part 3 will air, and next week in the morning we'll show part 3 here and stay live with you here. So we're just going to be 1 week behind. So if you want to see it in advance, you got to watch it on the GAN network or Grace Awakening Network. Links are all below. So let's dive right into this conversation, and here's what aired last week. I think you'll like it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Still Growing in Grace. I hope you enjoyed last week's. Just to let you know and remind you that you will find us on Wednesday nights here on the GAN program or on YouTube or Facebook. We run it on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and every Wednesday night on the Grace Awakening Network. You're welcome to join myself on Sunday mornings at Hope Fellowship, ycc.com, as well as a few of the other team members who are part of this conversation. In fact, these guys are awesome. Richard Murray, he's phenomenal. And then we have Fred Young, and we have Randy Elstrott, and of course, we've got Bill Thrasher. This team of folks has been so much fun to get to know, and I hope you enjoyed last week's conversation. If you did, make sure you share, let other people know about it. That'd be really helpful. But I also would love to invite you to partner with us and support us financially. You can do it through the U.S. or through the Canadian website. Every little bit's going to help. I always say the gospel's free, but getting it out costs money. If you want to watch previous episodes, please visit mikezenker.blog, and you'll find links to other episodes. Last week, we did a gentle entry into what is hell, some of the complications we have with it. Today, we're going to go into part 2, which I really hope you're going to enjoy. And like I promised, it's more of a gentle, slower way to discuss this topic. It's like looking at it from different angles, from different personalities. And I think that's a real plus, a real benefit. So let's enjoy part 2 of Hell, a better hope-filled perspective, because there has got to be a better perspective. And I hope you'll agree with me and find a greater lens from hearing these programs and broadcasts. All right, welcome to Still Growing in Grace. Today's topic is going to be fun, and I hope you'll enjoy it. It's not a new topic, but it's a really, really important one. We want to talk about hell, and I've had people in my church ask me, so when are you going to start teaching on hell? And they gave me a tagline. I should call it "What the hell?" and this is from some of my seniors, and I'm laughing because it's funny. But the whole concept, and Richard, you have written papers. You wrote one called "The Problem of Hell." You've written "The Early Church on Hell." This is a huge topic, but I also think it's a hidden hindrance to understanding the goodness and love of God. I really do. So I don't know. Maybe let's just do a quick roundtable. Say hello, everyone, and where you're at on this journey of unlearning hell or rethinking hell or whatever. I think it's an important one. So just go around and say a quick hey. Don't do it all at once. You guys,
I guess I'll start.
you're killing me.
Uh, no, it's an interesting topic, and obviously for many of us who have been on a journey for a period of time, myself for a little over a decade, this is one you just got to confront at some point, right? You got to come to this, and you got to kind of just bulldoze right through this topic. And I'm probably a little bit different than a lot of people in the mainstream deconstruction type realm in my language and how I approach it. I'm not quite as dogmatic in my need to get rid of certain words or try to fight against the concept of hell altogether. I actually think hell is a legitimate, necessary, and frankly, a very concrete portion of our post-mortem experience.
Mm.
How we define hell, how we understand it, I have radically shifted in 10 years.
Mm.
There's a lot of people out there who have tried to say there is no hell, and I know what their intention is. Their intention is to say it's not what we thought it was, or it's not what you learned it to be, but that's not the language they use. They basically kind of go all the way to the nth degree and say it doesn't exist. And I'm not quite there yet. We can talk through what I believe here in a little while
Yeah.
more. I still believe that there is some sort of post-mortem judgment. There is an element of refining and torment. I'll even use that word, that is part of the human journey. And
But it may not be anything like what we've been told.
but it may not be what you thought it was or how it was used as some kind of punishment. I do not believe in punishment. I think the scriptures are pretty clear that this isn't a punitive experience, but it's a remedial experience.
Oh. Randy. You there, Randy? Oh, he's frozen up. Fred, jump in.
Well, for me, as a pastor, I come at it two ways. First of all, there was a personal journey that I went on where I came to a different understanding, rethinking hell, and basically as to the nature and duration of it, and what judgment meant as well. And at some point, I'd really like to discuss how I think the reaping and sowing and the whole idea of empathy is a major way that God brings about correction in our life. When we're able, I think God's able to cause us something humans we're limited in, we can't do, but able to cause us to feel and walk in the shoes of those whom we have interacted with. And I do think over the course of time, empathy is a major part of what that judgment looks like. But for me, as a pastor of a congregation that was a fairly decent sized congregation, I brought my understanding to my congregation, which resulted in, within a matter of weeks, a matter of 4 or 5 weeks, over 600 people exiting our church. And it was traumatic because it became, the FBI got involved.
Wow.
Seriously.
Oh
because of letters that were received and sent out, threats. It became such a, the story is, I'm not making it up. I have all that stuff in a file that I don't look at very often. But
you will later and laugh.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm looking forward to that day. So hell became hell for me on earth. And so I have a two thing, a personal, and then I led a congregation through it. But for me personally, it is the subject that has brought more freedom to me because of my upbringing and because of the fear of hell. So it's probably the main thing that helped me and released me into the freedom of a loving God. And I had to deconstruct hell to get there. And that was the biggest piece for me.
I had, I grew up with, everybody's going to burn. So, and if I screwed up, even if if I died and forgot to ask for forgiveness for one thing, I would go to hell. That's kind of what I believed. And so I lived in a lot of fear. There was one point in my late teens where I heard a message from a youth leader on the love of God. And that night I couldn't sleep. And I couldn't reconcile, if God loves me that much, I don't understand how this hell thing can work then. And so I put it on the back burner and never dealt with it. And so hell was not the first thing I had to deconstruct. For me, understanding the covenants was my first thing I had to deconstruct, and understand the difference between covenant, new covenant, old covenant, my identity, that I don't have two natures. And then one of the biggest ones that started my journey to allow myself to even visit this topic of hell was end times, eschatology, unlearning. And as I'm unlearning all these things, the topic of hell came up, and I realized, if I've had to unlearn all these things all along, there's got to be more and better hope-filled perspectives. And I was open to be teachable, and boom, there was so much available to learn about how I saw hell before and what it could be now. And I love how you said, I think it was Bill, you just said that it's not that we say there is no hell, which is a bombastic statement to say. And I've said it. I'll jokingly tell, depending on the context, I'll tell people the word is not in the Bible, and because it isn't in the Greek. They're translations of other words, but sort of shock statement, but sort of not. So I think that unpacking really, really helped me. So now I'm far more open to it. And if there are people listening to this and you're not sure, so, this sounds scary, know that we have wrestled with a whole bunch of ways of seeing this. Bill, jump in. Or sorry, Richard, sorry.
Oh, well, this is the topic that challenges us to know the divine nature of God more than any other topic. Whatever hell is, I think we begin with a premise. It's our darkest fear. It's our deepest fear. Our fear of alienation, our fear of separation, our fear of torture, our fear of eternal torture. That whatever great fear we have, irrational fears that we have, we project onto hell, which is why it means so many different things. But if we know the nature of God, and this demands that we do, Jesus said that my church, the gates of hell, will not prevail against my church. And my church are those people who know my nature. Now, the whole world is his church, but to the extent we know his nature, the gates of hell will not prevail, which means that the gates can't keep us out. And, his nature, our understanding of his nature, makes one thing positive, one thing sure. I was looking at some of my old essays that I wrote, and I said this at the end of one of these essays, that one thing is for sure: God's parental punishments are illuminative, curative, restorative, and rehabilitative. He is the great fatherly physician who rescues and restores us from the guttermost to the uttermost. And his quality, well, here, this essay was addressing those who claim they've been to hell. The 23 minutes in hell and the other things. So then I said his quality work takes a lot longer than a mere 23 minutes to rightly perceive it and to understand it. So this whole thing, every demonic lie, every fear-based lie, every delusional thing we struggle with, not just individually, but also corporately, all of these things weigh into this and subtly make us project hell onto the nature of God, to where we see him as the abuser, as the afflictor, as the oppressor, as the unforgiver, as the punisher, as the revenger, all these things. And it defames his character. How about that? What if we just resist the notion of hell as it's commonly understood, because it defames God's character? And I think it was F.F. Bruce said something to the effect that, eternal conscious torment is incompatible with the revealed nature of Jesus. And I think if we start from that viewpoint, and it's not that there's not something there. What we're called to address is this vacuum that's in us, this vacuum where hell becomes a possibility. Hate is what makes hell a possibility. Somebody's hating somebody, and that makes hell possible. But when we love everybody, it makes hell impossible. And the very thing that's been, you said anguish and causing us pain, the Lord reconfigures it. And to what we so feared is nothing more. I remember in the Civil War, Civil War was really big around where I'm at here. And we have, they have these famous things where prisons were turned into hospitals. Some Civil War prisons were turned into hospitals. And I love that concept that what we see as a prison is in actuality, as we mature, a hospital. It's a place where the Lord takes us, as we've said before, on a cosmic walkabout, at the end of our lives, a postmortem walkabout, where he teaches us. And it's only between the two. And yet we're all there together at the same time. But, it's a place where we're cured. And if we see God as the father of all humanity, then we have to approach his nature. What would a father do? What would a perfect father do? What would a benevolent father do? And when we see the father's nature, hell is an impossibility. No father would send their child to hell. That's an abomination. Not as defined by eternal conscious torment. No way. There's no way. Mm-hmm. And so I think that once we apply these common sense things to our image of God, then it's going to take care of itself. And the gates of hell, what's going to happen to them? Samson in the Old Testament is a great picture of that. He comes and he puts the gates of hell on his shoulders, the Gaza gates, and he rips them off the hinges and takes them up. And I think that's a sign. That whole Samson story has Jesus all through it, but that's a sign of what Jesus did. He took the gates of hell on his shoulders so that no one will be eternally separated. There are no gates. And who says so? The church says so. The church who knows the nature of God.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Randy, what's your background on this?
Well, I came into a relationship with Jesus out of sort of an atheism. So I didn't really believe in hell.
Lucky.
True, very true. So the church talked me into it, basically. So that's what happened. So I had to swallow it for many years, but it was always repulsive to me because it wasn't, when I gave my life to the Lord, it was on a testimony of his goodness, his kindness. And so I bought it. I thought, okay, this is great. But then there was this bait and switch where once I started getting into it, I found out he's not all good and kind. There is this thing looming out there to, all humanity is headed toward it. So the way I dealt with it is I talked myself into saying, well, no, he's not sending anybody. They're sending themselves in some way. There's this thing out there that God can't stop this from happening. Only we can stop it from happening. And so I worked it all out in my head to where God could still be good and this could still be real. But the fact is, that's not scriptural. That's not what we're learning. What the whole concept, what we've gotten, this hellish idea comes from the scriptures, and it doesn't say the things that I was believing. And so I had to come to terms with God's goodness. Is he truly good? Because I'm not sure, Richard, maybe it was you that just said it, that when we think about what really is the concept of eternal conscious torment, that doesn't come out of the good God that we're talking about. Okay, it can't come out of that. So I had to deal with that. And it was, in my journey and understanding who our Father is and his goodness and his kindness, that was the last thing to go. It was tough because, you're okay until you hit that. And when you hit that, everybody turns against you. And so that one was the last one for me to deal with. And it's, I have dealt with it. I've been relatively vocal about it. But I do also agree with what you said, Bill, that there's a lot of, it's the words we use. People use the word hell. And so I use the word hell to make them comfortable so that we can even carry on a conversation. If I say,
Yeah.
I don't believe in hell, they won't talk to me. But if I say, oh, hell is very different than what you've been taught, well, then maybe they'll listen now. So
I thought it was our belief in Jesus that made us brothers and sisters. Not our belief in
Isn't that
hell.
crazy? Isn't that the truth? It should be, right? But
Well, it's in no early creed. I mean, that's never been a belief, at least in the early church, that you had to believe in hell. That wasn't part of the statement of faith.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not part of the sinner's prayer.
Well, and go ahead, Randy. You had something else?
No, I was done.
This is going to be a funny statement. To play devil's advocate, because I think in the context of our conversation, somebody has to be the one to bring the arguments that would be brought by others. And I think one of the common arguments that outside of the loving God aspect, and that is one that, Randy, I agree with you. And I had to wrestle through a lot of the same things because I kind of try to divert it around God, kind of like hell was this kind of bypass around God. And there's just a separation, and you're never been actually connected to God and all that kind of stuff. But I think another one of the aspects that we should discuss, whether we can get through it all now or maybe we tease it for the next one, is really what is the point of not having some sort of punishment for those who have wronged us? Right. And I think there's a huge hang up for many, many people here in the world who see atrocities, who see what they conceive of as pure evil, or they see of as something needing a retributive act, karma, a karma-based act against it, to kind of feel that justice has been served. We live in a society where justice is hand for hand, eye for an eye. And like I think we all agree, scripturally, it kind of starts to deteriorate some of those concepts. But humanity, we cling to that concept on a lot. If you've wronged me, maybe I don't get to have vision, but
you're going to get yours.
Mine, says the Lord, right? Vengeance is mine. So the Lord's I may not get you, but the Lord's going to get you. So we got to get through that part of it too. So I'm just bringing that to the table for discussion. I don't know. I know we got only a couple more minutes here, but I think that's a part of how we need to interpret this thing, because as Richard, you said, to kind of undo my own devil's advocacy, that is a projection of our vengeances onto God.
Well, the character of God's a big part.
It is. And so, right. I think, if you're listening to this, you just have to start thinking about the fact, is that your desires or is that God's desires? Because a lot of times we've put those expectations on our understandings of God. And I think that's something that each one of us has had to wrestle through and realize maybe that's actually not in the character of God, especially if we view God through the lens of Jesus.
This is where I think his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Yeah. Is in the area of revenge and getting even. And it's his thoughts are his mercy and grace, and along with correction. Whenever I brought this to our congregation, one of the individuals that rejected this whole idea, because along with this, I brought in the idea of universal salvation. And,
nothing like going in slow and easy.
Yeah, I didn't say I was smart. Nobody accused me of being smart at all. To be honest with you, I was so excited about it that I thought others would be excited about it. Yeah. And I was, that was, the naivety was on display. But this individual rejected this whole thing because she was raped. And she could not stand the idea that this person, even after any kind of correction, would be in heaven.
Yeah.
So I think Bill's right. We have to deal with that idea of what's that look like. And
well, there's a virus in our programming. There's a virus in our programming of who we think God is, how we read the Bible. Because as soon as we see this word hell, we're excited because now somebody's going to pay, right? Now we know that I'm fine. I don't have to forgive. God's going to get him. And that's not
I can forgive. God. I can forgive.
Right.
But I don't have to worry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Well, I think if there's one passage, and maybe this would be for the next one, but
Yeah, we're
one
going to continue
passage,
this after this.
yeah, one passage to give hope on this, and I think it's the most important passage on this concept of what exactly goes on and what about justice and what about suffering and that sort of thing. But this is 1 Corinthians 3:13 through 15, and I'll read it to you. And this is speaking of post-mortem judgment. Every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide which he is built on, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Now, there's a lot of things in there, but basically, and if the other passages talk about the wood, hay, and stubble, that's burn up. Whatever things have been wood, hay, and stubble to which we've attached to believe or trusted in, put our faith on, put our love in, those things will be burned away and we'll suffer the loss of those things. But we will be saved, but it will be through the cleansing fire of the Lord. So the things that we'll lose are the things we need to lose. And
Absolutely.
But salvation is the end of it. So, where I would like to get people to do, instead of thirsting for revenge, lead them to a place where they thirst for the healing of the one that's hurt them.
Correct.
And that is our and I know some people, like the lady you're talking about, she's not in a position to do that right now. But that doesn't mean she's never going to be in the position. Right. And it doesn't mean that we don't need the wisdom of God to circumspectly listen, empathize, let her lament to her heart's content. But us hold on to the hope that there'll be a way that we can be there to help, just as a resource, to help redirect her to greener pastures, or less brown pastures and pasture to pasture type of thing. And, I think and again, the other most important passage to me anyway is Matthew 5:38 through 48, where Jesus says that his Father's perfection is like this. We're to be perfect like his perfection. And his perfection is he loves his enemies. He turns the other cheek. He walks the extra mile. He blesses them. He loves his enemy. He doesn't hate them. And so, being in the legal profession, the two theories are, that you punish people eye for an eye. That's what most people believe. But then, I've got so many tales. I've got tales of rehabilitation that would absolutely bless y'all's socks off. And these are people that they went through these things called responsibility courts. There's drug court is a responsibility court. Mental health court is a responsibility court. Domestic violence is a responsibility court, where they become like a family with the court personnel. And they go every week and they take the anger management or they take drug rehab. They have some sanctions against them if they goof up, slaps on the wrist and then other things. But it's all meant to guide them to a place of rehabilitation. And that is fundamentally what's missing from our prison system. But you see flourish, you see blossoms of it. Mm-hmm. And all really at the end of the day, this is just about rehabilitation, that God's going to make it all just right. And he's going to take us through the valleys, that we need. And there will be, but the suffering, Bill, is, and I don't know, this, but the suffering is cathartic. It's suffering, in tears.
I know we got to wrap up, and I'm helping Mike cut off, but I'll tell everybody on the next episode why I actually do believe in eternal conscious torment.
Perfect. And I think that's going to be very interesting and a good teaser. So let's wrap this up. Part 2 is coming next time. So hang on. There's more good news. Next time. All right. Oh my goodness. So thanks, Bill, for that teaser at the end. However, as I admitted earlier when we first started the program, this is technically part 1, and yet it's labeled part 2. I, again, don't know how I mixed those up. It's just maybe I was trying to do too much at once. So today's was actually part 1 of the Hell series. Last week was part 2. So if you like the teaser at the end of Today with Bill, he actually covered it last week. So who knows? But they're both really good. And don't forget to join us tonight on the Grace Awakening Network for part 3, which is the legit part 3. And we should be legit moving forward all the way through. So don't forget to see the links below. You can watch the playlist of previously played episodes. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week on Still Growing in Grace. I thank you for joining us. Let us know what you thought. Join me next time on Still Growing in Grace. Enjoy previous episodes by downloading our podcast at growingingrace.ca. If this show's been an encouragement to you, consider making a donation today. For our Canadian link, visit growingingrace.ca, and for our USA link, visit eschurch.com. Your donation will help us continue spreading really good news. Thank you again for tuning in to Still Growing in Grace.